In the previous video, we were discussing about exception handling. In this video, we will continue the discussion and we will learn some new things. At the same time, we will also practice and look at a few examples of exception handling and just to get a better idea of how to use try and except blocks in Python. So here I have a question. It says in a UPI payment system, the user must enter a 6-digit PIN, and if the entered PIN is invalid, which is not a six-digit integer, then we should raise a value error and prompt the user to try again. Okay. So let us see how we can solve the problem. We want to build a system where a user has to enter a PIN, and the PIN is supposed to be a 6-digit PIN. And I'm also going to add one extra piece of information to this question, which is that if the user enters the correct PIN, then we are going to say that you are logged in. Otherwise, we will say ask the user to try again. But if the user enters invalid pin, then we are going to raise an error and we will ask again, but we'll give a prompt to the user that you have entered an invalid pin. Okay, so wrong pin we have to handle separately, invalid pin we have to handle separately. If the pin is correct, then we are going to show the message that you are logged in. Okay, so let us get started. So this is going to be a while loop because we are going to continuously ask the user to enter the pin. So I'm taking a while loop and I'm putting a while is equal to true. And let me think about the break condition. So break condition is going to be if and in this, let me first ask for pin. So the pin is going to be, I'm going to say enter input, enter the pin. Okay, and if the user enters the pin, then I'm going to check whether it is equal to the correct pin or not. So somewhere I will need to have the correct pin. So let me have the correct pin here. So the correct pin should be 12345 6, and I'm going to ask the user to enter the pin, and then I'm going to say if pin equal to correct pin, then I'm going to uh, print you are logged in, and I'm going to break out of the loop. Okay, but if the user enters something that is not in 6 digits, so I'm going to say else elif, and I'm going to say pin or length of the pin is not equal to 6, then I have to raise an error. So I think in the previous video I did not show you how to raise error. So we can also raise errors. We can raise built-in errors and we can also raise custom errors. So custom errors is something we cannot do right now. We need to learn a few other things in order to use custom errors. But we can use built-in errors. So we can use we can raise a value error here. Okay. So it says I can raise a value error and I can give my message saying you have entered invalid pin. Pin should have 6 digits. Okay, although pin should be integer, but I'm not converting to integer because we need to check the length of the pin. And if this is the case, then again we are going to raise a value error. Okay, so here I'm raising a value error, and if I'm raising an error, then later on I also need to we need to catch the error. So, and what happens when we catch the error? Let me say I'm going to put everything in a try block, and then I'm going to have a except here, and I'm going to say exception as E, although this is a bad practice because this is the general broad and vague way of catching exceptions. So we will tweak that a little bit later, but right now let me just say print, and I'm going to say print uh, you entered an invalid pin, please try again. Okay, so when we raise an error, raising the error is usually for the developer to see, and we are going to log the error, and we are going to have some kind of metrics built on which software is having how many errors and what type of errors are coming. So those are usually for the developers. But whatever we are doing after catching the exception, it is for the user to see. So we cannot show to the user value error, but we can show to the user a nice message on what user is supposed to do. So that is also the purpose of raising exceptions and catching exceptions. So the code is raising an error here, that is fine, but this is not what I want the user to see. I want the user to see this block. Okay, so that is the plan. And so far we have asked the user to enter the pin, and if the pin is correct, we are breaking out. If the pin is not equal to 6, then we are raising a value error. Otherwise, uh, we are going to say if the pin is not correct and if the pin is not equal to 6, then we are just going to print that you entered an incorrect pin. Okay, and I'll say please try again. So let us see whether this works or not. So let me run this correct pin here, and this should be actually be a string because we are going to be comparing it. And let us run this and see. It says enter the pin. I'm going to say 878787, which is 6 digits, and it says you entered an incorrect pin. So that is what we wanted. Suppose we enter something that is not 8 digits, so I'll just say 987. See, then it says you entered an invalid pin. So I raised an exception, but then I also caught the exception, and I made sure that it is giving a proper message to the user. Again, if I enter 123, it says you entered an invalid pin because it is not 6 digits. But if I enter something that is 6 digits, 123 and 123, it says you entered an incorrect pin. That is what I wanted. I wanted to make it different from putting incorrect versus invalid. And then I will put the correct pin 1234566, and it says you are logged in, and I have broken out of the loop. So this way we can maintain it. Now when we raise this error, before raising the error, we can also do something. For example, we can also write something to a file. So we can also have a function here. We can say log error. Okay, and I will just say message. And what this will do is this will open a file. I will say open logs, or I can say pin logs.txt, and I'm going to open it in append mode, and I'm going to say as f, and I'm going to say f.write, and I'm going to say what was the error. So I'm going to just write the message. So let this be the message. Okay, so I'm going to say this is the message, and I'm going to say log error. So here I'm going to pass message. Okay, so this is the function. I've written a function to log the error, and here I'm just going to call log error, and I'm going to pass message in that. And here also I'm going to raise the error using a message. Okay, so now if I run this, so now if I come here and if I try to enter the pin, suppose I say 123, it says you entered an invalid pin, and I should have some log of that. So let me come here and look at pin logs. You can see it says you have entered an invalid pin. So you can also add timestamps there. So right now I've not shown you how to add timestamps, but just for this example, let me jump the gun and say import. I'm going to use a module which is called as date time. At this point, I don't know if you're familiar with this or not. If you're not familiar, in the upcoming modules, we are going to see this. So we can just take the time, current time. I want to find out what is the current time. So I'm going to take date time. Let me run this first. And I'm going to say date time dot now. Okay, so this is giving me the current time, and if I do a string of this, this is giving me the time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this and I'm going to write this alongside the message. So I'm going to make a f string so that I know at what time the error happened. So I'm going to take this, which is a very standard way of writing errors. I'm going to write it this way. Okay, so now if I see, I stopped the execution in between, so we got one error, which is a keyboard interrupt error. So this is also one type of exception, keyboard interrupt exception. So now I have my log error function. Now if I run this and if I say 123, okay, I should also add a new line so that all the errors go to the new line. And now if I enter 123, it says you entered an invalid pin. But if I go to my logs, you will see here it says, okay, why didn't it go to the next line? Let me stop it and run it again. I say 123, it says invalid pin. If I come here, okay, it has come to the next line. And then if I enter, let me, if incorrect pin is entered, let me log that as well. So let me come here and let me say message, and here the message is going to be this, which is incorrect pin, and I'm going to print it, but I'm also going to log it. So let me also ask the name of the person who is doing all this, so that when we have logs, we also store the name of the person. Okay, so here I'm just adding name, input, enter the name, so we'll have the name of the person. And if we have name, then whenever we are logging something, we can also have name of the person. So in the message, we can always have name. Okay, and okay, here also let me have name. Okay, there are better ways of doing this. We'll see those later in terms of logging, but I just want to show you how the concept actually comes into picture in a real life scenario. So this is something that you will actually find yourself doing. And now let me stop everything and then let me run it again. Let me run this cell and then let me run this cell. And if I go here in my pin.logs, okay, so let me enter 123, and it says enter the pin. Oh, sorry, enter the name. I was supposed to enter the name. Sorry. Let me run this again. So I'm saying enter the name, Shyam, and enter the pin. Let me put 89. It says you entered an invalid pin. So if I come here, it should say Shyam, you have entered invalid pin. Okay, fine. So I know at what time which person tried to do what with the banking system. So again, let me ask him to enter the pin 897. Again, it is invalid, and then the person suppose enters 123 456, and then he's logged in. So for logging in, we have not logged the message, so we can actually do the same work here also. We can remove this print statement, and we can log the message, and the message can be this. So we'll know at what point which person logged where, okay, using proper exception handling. So we can here do this, and we can put message here, okay. And because we are always printing the message, so what we can do here is we can actually have a finally block. This I'm leaving up to you how to integrate finally block here. So what we can do is we can assign a value to the message, and we can in finally we can print message, okay. We can do, instead of doing print message here and print message here, and we always have a message, we have a message, we have a message here also, we can have a message, okay. So we can remove this print statement from here, and in the finally block we can have a message, okay. And because we are using a with operator here, so we don't have to close the file. But suppose if you're making any connection with a database or something like that, then you can, in the finally block, you can come here and you can close the connection also. So let me run this cell again. Let me say the name is Ram, and enter the pin, maybe 98. It says you entered invalid pin. 89, you said invalid pin, and then let me put the correct pin, 123 456, and it says you are logged in. And if I come back to my logs, you will see that Shyam has made one attempt at invalid pin, 2 times he has made invalid pin. Then Ram has tried invalid pin, invalid pin, invalid pin, and then in the end also there is some mistake. Okay, here it should say you entered the correct pin. Okay, so if I run this again, let me say Ram, and I will enter the correct pin 456, and it says you are logged in. Okay, so if I come here to my logs, you will see. Okay, sorry, we need to have here as well. So in this block we did not put anything. Print message, because we are breaking there, so we were not adding. So we can log the message, and then we can log out. So then we can break. So I'm going to say Ram, and I'll say 123 456. It says you entered the correct pin, and if I come here, you can see it says you have entered the correct pin. So this way we can integrate if else, at the same time function, at the same time file handling, and if try except blocks, and raising an exception in a simple example. So I hope you got to understand what are the applications of some of the things that we have been discussing in the past 2 or 3 videos. So let us take a few more examples to understand this better. So in this example, I think in the accept block, I made a mistake. Actually, it should be you entered an invalid pin. When I was explaining, I think I added you entered a correct pin here. No, that was wrong. Correct pin should be here, and here we should have you entered an invalid pin because we are catching an exception here. So small mistake I made during writing the code. Okay, so let us move ahead and let us do one more example here. It's a simple one. Let us take this example. So it says in an online shopping cart, the user enters the quantity of an item. If the input is not a number, value error should be raised. If the quantity exceeds the available stock, then program should raise an exception with a message out of stock. Okay, so we need to write a function. We can try a function, or uh, let us write it without writing a function. Let us just say that stock is equal to 10, and if someone is trying to add the quantity of an item, so we need to ask the user to enter the quantity of the item. So it should be integer, and we are going to say input, and we are going to say enter the quantity. Okay, and once the user enters the quantity, try to think about what are the things that can go wrong here. So when the user enters the quantity, we can have some kind of exception. So let me write the broad exception. Later we will make changes to it. So here I'm just doing a pass means if there is an exception, then don't do anything, which is a very bad practice, but let us refine it in a while. So user is going to enter the quantity, and it says if the input is not a number. Okay, if the input is not a number, which means that if there is an exception except uh, value error, or sorry, it can be, I think it will be a value error. if the user enters something wrong, value error as E, then we need to, input is not a number, value error should be raised. So we can raise a value error and we can say you gave an invalid, you gave an invalid entry. Okay. So by the way, anyway, value error will be raised, but I am catching that value error and then raising the value error with a custom message. And I'm catching this value error because I might also want to do something else here. I can also want to print the message, or I might also want to log the message to a file or send a notification somewhere. Okay. So that's why I'm catching this error. Otherwise, if you don't do this anyway, a value error will be raised, but I also want to add a custom message here. That's the purpose of doing a value error. And then it then says if the quantity exceeds the available stock. Okay. So else, okay, so which means that I will come here and I will say else, which means if this was executed correctly and the quantity was converted to int, in that case I need to check whether the quantity exceeds the available stock. Okay, so if I say quantity is greater than, if quantity is greater than stock, then in that case I need to raise an exception which says out of stock. So this is the way to raise an exception. I can say exception, general exception, and I can say out of stock. Okay, so this is the code, and what we can also do is instead of writing this else block here, I can take this and I can also put it here actually. Okay, this is also a way of doing it. So I can have a value error here exception, and then I can print here something went wrong. Okay, so let us try to do this. Let us run this, and it says enter the quantity. If I say 5, then it does not do anything because we did not say what is supposed to be done. So I can have a else block here, and we can say, we can print added to cart, and I can say quantity is equal to quantity. Okay, so if everything goes well in the try block, then we can give a confirmation to the user that whatever quantity the user entered, that is added to the cart. So let me run this, and if let me say 6, it says added to cart quantity 6. Let me run this again, and let me just say 9.8. Okay, so then it will give me a value error, but okay, so it is raising a value error. Okay, sorry. So what I can do here is instead of raising the value error here, because anyway we have the value error, so I can just print the thing because I'm not catching the error any one more time. So I'm raising the exception here itself. So there's no point in raising that error. I can have a print statement here, and I can say you entered an invalid entry. Okay, so because otherwise if we raise an exception in the accept block, then further we should have one more block of code to accept that, because whenever we raise an exception we need to catch it. So we can't just raise an exception and leave it like that. So if we do that, then we need to have one more try block. So I'm not doing that. So we should not raise the exception there, we should print it. So let me do this, and let me put 8.9. Then it says you entered an invalid entry. Fine. If I run this again, it says enter the stock. Let me put 4. This is working. And if I enter something else, say for example if I enter apple, then also it says you entered a invalid entry. And I don't think there is anything else that can go wrong here, because I think we are only going to have value error. So this exception is not going to do anything. But if something happens, then this exception will also come into picture. So here we can also just add E. Okay, so that if something goes wrong, then we can have error message here also. Okay, so this is a simple explanation. You can also make this into a while loop, and you can also write it as a function. We can, what we can do is we can write a function. We can say def add to cart, and we can just say stock, because stock is the only thing we need here. And we can take this, and we can come here, we can remove the stock, and we can put all of this inside this function. Okay, and then let us try to call the function. Let us say add to cart, and let me just say 10. Then it will ask for quantity. Let me say 5. Then it says added to cart. Okay, now okay, let us also try. Suppose the stock is 10, but I am asking for maybe 13. So then it says something went wrong, out of stock, because okay, this exception was raised. Once we raised this exception, we came here and it says something went wrong. So this is also fine. So here we are getting something went wrong and out of stock. So this is one way of doing it. You can think of many other ways. Instead of raising an exception here also you can raise a value error. Usually a good idea would be to have some kind of custom exceptions, but right now we have not discussed those. So let us look at one more question. The question says build a UPI payment system where the user provides an amount to transfer and the recipient UPI and the recipient UPI ID. So we are going to give the ID and we are going to give an amount to transfer. And if the amount is not numeric, we should raise some error. And if the UPI ID is not found, we should raise some other error. And maybe if it is found, then we can change the entry in the database, something like this. So here they have given a mock dictionary. So this is actually should be like some table or some connection to the database where we are going to ask the user for the UPI ID and we are going to check in the database whether that user exists or not. So we don't have any database, but we have like a small dictionary here. But whatever logic we apply, the same logic will kind of fit into a real life situation as well. So let us get started. So what we need to do is we need to ask the user for an amount and the user, the name of the user, okay, or the UPI ID of the user. Okay, so let me write a function. Let me say process payment, and in this I need to just have I need to make the UPI database available. So let me copy this database. Let me take this here. Okay, so I have the database and I need to pass this database to the function as a parameter. Even if we don't pass, it is available, so function will have access to it. But as a good practice, let us pass the database as a parameter to the function, and then we are going to ask the user to enter the ID. So let me say UPI ID, and I'm going to ask the user to enter the UPI ID. Okay, and then we are going to ask the user to enter the amount. So amount should be integer. So I'm going to say input int and I'm going to say input. Or let me allow the user to enter decimals also. So let me make it float. But I think amount when we are transferring, I think it's supposed to be integer. So let me keep it int. Okay. But if you want, you can also make it float. So we have the UPI ID and we have amount, but there are certain things that can go wrong here. So let me have try except block. Let us start writing the edge cases also. Okay. So except exception as E. I'm just going to print E for now. So what are the things that can go wrong? One is that there can be a type error here or a value error here when we are entering the issue. So let me write except value error. By the way, all the specific exceptions should be kept above the general exceptions. So the more specific the exception is, should be on the top, and the more general exceptions should be in the bottom. So exception, just the bare exception, that's the most general form of exception. So that should be in the bottommost, and the more specific the exception is, it should be on the top. Because if we keep this exception block, this except block above, then all the except will go here and nothing will reach here. So it should flow down in the order of generality of the exception class. Okay, so if we have a value error as E, then I'm going to just print the error for now. And after that, what we need to do is we need to check. Okay, uh, if these two things are done, then we need to check if UPI ID in UPI database. Okay, UPI database, if it is present, if it is not present in the UPI database, then again we need to raise an exception. So I'm going to say raise. This will be a key error. Okay, and I'm going to say user not found in the database. Okay, you can also add the user here so that the exception becomes a little bit more UPI ID. Sorry. Okay, so if the user is not in database, then we are raising an error. Fine. After that, um, once this is done, then we can call a function to make the payment. So right now we are not calling any function to make the payment. So we can just simply print that, or we can have a else block where we can print that. So we can have an else block here, and we can say print uh, transaction transaction was successful. Okay, you can also actually alter the dictionary, and suppose if Rohan is sending money to Mohan, 5,000 rupees, so you can update the dictionary to have Mohan's value from 30,000 to 35,000. So you can do that. So but let us first run this and see whether it is working as per our expectation or if there are any bugs. So I'm going to say I'm going to pass this UPI database. Let us first see if there are any issues in the code. Okay, so let me have some meaningful message here. Let me say here invalid entry. Okay, and invalid entry, and I'm going to say please enter a valid number. So this should be for the amount. And if you are having any other exception, for example, let us also catch key error. So whatever exceptions we are raising, it's a good idea to catch those errors and have a meaningful value. So raise key error, and we are passing a message here. So same message we can catch here, and we can just say e, we can just say print e here. Okay, or you can have this message shown here as well. Both are okay. So let us try to see what happens. Enter the UPI ID. So let me say Rohan at the rate UPI, and let me enter the amount, which is maybe 1000, and it says transaction was successful. That is completely okay. Now let me say let me have a name which is not there. So let me have Sohan at the rate UPI. So Sohan is not there in the database. So it should, okay, 10,000. It says user Sohan API not found in the database. Okay, fine. Let us try one more case where we are entering Rohan at the rate UPI, and we are giving a invalid entry here. So let me just put Apple. I'm supposed to enter number. So it should say please invalid entry, please enter a valid number. So all the cases are working here. So this is another example. I hope this gave you a little bit more clarity on how to raise the errors and how to catch the errors and how to show a meaningful message here. So here is one more question. This is about a mobile recharge system, and here we need to enter the user's mobile number and recharge amount. And there are a few fail cases here. For example, if the user entering the number is not a numeric number, in that case we should raise a value error. And if the mobile number is not 10 digits long, then also we should raise a value error. So this is similar to the pin mobile UPI pin problem that we solved. So I'm not going to solve this. I'm leaving this question for you to solve. And so please try to solve the problem, and try to post your code in the comment section, and try to compare your solution with the solution of other people. And if you're facing any problems, I will definitely try to help you. And please try to solve this on your own. And I hope you in this practice session we solved 2 to 3 questions, and you got some idea on how exception handling along with file handling and writing functions, etc., these things are coming together to solve uh, kind of a real life problem. So I'll keep it till here in this video, and then we'll continue our journey of learning Python in the next module. Thank you.